Yana Kotlyar-Gal.
Yes, Nina.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for participating in this episode of Jødepodden, the Jew pod.
Yes.
And thank you for bringing me into this house behind the castle, which is the embassy of Israel in Oslo in Norway.
Well, first of all, you're welcome. And
Thank
you're
you.
welcome here. Is it your first time?
No, I've actually been here before, but it's a while ago.
Okay.
And it was under completely different circumstances.
So I welcome you back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being interested in talking to me.
And you actually just recently came back to Oslo. Tell me, why did you go to Israel in the first place, and why did you suddenly return?
Yeah, so I have a small daughter, my second one. She is 4 months now. I went back home, not really home because my home is in Ashkelon where my father is, but I went to Tel Aviv and to give birth to my daughter. And I came back to Oslo because I have an older daughter, 2 years old. She had to be back to the barnhage, so everybody are sane. And at the end of the 15 weeks of maternity leave that we have in Israel, I had to return to work, which was last week.
And isn't it also so that you were kind of suddenly brought back? Because as we all know, on May 22nd, the Norwegian Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister announced the recognition of Palestine as a state of its own. And the ambassador, Avi Feldklein, was called home. And you, as the chargé d'affaires, the deputy, you came back and you've been in charge since then here at the embassy.
Oh, so it's been more than a week and a half. God, time passes by so quickly. But you're absolutely correct. Yes, after the recognition, the current government recognized Palestine. Ambassador Neil Feldklein had to be recalled for consultations. And yes, I was second day that I was supposed to come back, was already Chargé d'affaires. Welcome. Now you have to hold the fort.
And as you said, while I walked into your office, you might suddenly have to run out to breastfeed, or?
Yeah, I have my pump here because she's still very young, and I'll try to breastfeed her as much as possible. I'm very jealous of the fact that you have here a very long maternity. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important to have that quality time with the kid in that early age stages of its life. But unfortunately and surprisingly, we don't have that in Israel as a country that promotes giving birth and children and celebrates big families. We still need to work on that social aspect.
That is to me so interesting because we know for a fact that the birth rate in Israel is quite low, maybe as a result of all the drama, all the traumas, all the conflicts. There's also an issue, as far as I remember being a lot in Israel back in the 1990s, that the fertility in Israel, then they claimed that was lower than many other places. I'm not sure if that is accurate though.
I don't know about that actually, but I do know that we're very ahead in terms of the fertility technology and everything, because we do insist of trying to have bigger families. Maybe it has something to do actually in terms of survival mode, in terms of continuing being, to be the Jewish majority that we want to be in general, and to make sure that we have a continuance. Still the Holocaust is not far away. The Holocaust just happened in a lot of people's mind. It's still the second and third generation. So I think that it even stresses more in times of war and conflict the need for the future generations. So you always have the baby booms, and unfortunately after all different operations but I think the birth rate in Israel is quite good.
Okay.
I think it's higher than the regular ones in OECD, for example. Mm-hmm. But inside Israel, also different societies inside. So yes, the Arab population is stronger. They have a bigger birth rate. Bedouins also, for example.
But they live more traditional life, though, the Bedouins.
The Bedouins are a very interesting society. They serve in the army.
Go there now.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much to talk to you about.
So much.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep us on track.
Yes.
But what I wanted to say is, so one of the reasons why you maybe do not have the generous maternity leave policies as we have
Yeah.
is maybe because you just can't afford it because you need to finance the wars, or does it have anything to do with, the feminism has been strong in Norway as it has in Israel as well. Why hasn't these issues come further?
I think that's a very good question, Nina. I think I should go back to Israel and ask those questions. I know there's a lot of women who talk about that, but we cannot forget the stressful region that we live in, and it's not about financing the war. It's more of, this will be, let's talk about it later. Like, there's more pressing issues we should take care of. It's okay, we handle, we're strong women.
Yeah, you can't prioritize that.
We can't prioritize that. Unfortunately, I think that if we'll have, for example, more women in the government, and yes, then we'll be able to put that on, on the agenda. So I see here that you have 1 year of maternity leave in Moscow, where I served. Before they have, I think it's almost 2 years paid, and then you can be until 5 years, and you cannot be laid off. So that's even they're really trying.
They're even further.
They're further. They're really trying to get you to have babies.
Yeah, but that's Putin's policy as well.
Exactly.
He wants the Russian mama.
They want more. They need more people.
They need more people to go to war.
People, unfortunately, yeah.
Okay. So you already told me a little bit about your life and your career. You've already been to Russia, to Moscow. Yeah. You told me also that you were a dancer or a performer, and that's one of Israel's policies when you recruit people to the diplomacy.
Not to be a dancer or a performer, but to have a
variety
of qualifications, or like to be a full-bodied person and not a plaquette, for example. Just like to have something interesting, to be. I think the most important thing is for you to be interesting and interested in people. So it doesn't really matter what BA you have and what. It can be in history, it can be in political sciences, it can be in theater, it can be in cinema. But if you qualify in terms of who you are as a person, how you convey your thoughts, your ability to have a conversation, your ability to initiate, to think outside the box, all these things, they're more important than what qualification you have as a BA or MA, for example.
But it's interesting though, because what you're saying is it's important to be able to reach out and get contact. And I guess, a lot of people in Norway now would say that you don't really succeed.
They don't. That is, it's not for lack of trying. Ever since we came here, also Ambassador and myself, we came here in August 22. We came with the greatest hopes to be able to, and optimism, to be able to enhance and strengthen the relationship between Israel and Norway. And we were optimistic and we had success. We were able to showcase to the people that we are here and our door is open. We were able to speak to everybody, even sometimes if outside they would say they would not speak to us.
And what is the situation now, you feel?
And now, of course, only being here since, as you said, May 23rd, for example, May 22nd, coming back, the situation is very, very different. My door is still open, and that is something that we emphasize. Our door is still open to any discussions.
Are people knocking on your door?
People are not knocking on our door. People, though, are sending a lot of... we have a lot of supporters, which is very touching to see. It's very strengthening these days. People will tell us that they support us and they understand the hardships, and sometimes they tell us that they do not feel comfortable speaking about it out loud, but it's important for them that we know. So we really appreciate that. And not in the last 2 weeks that something really happened, but because there is a crisis. But the crisis is not between the people. The crisis is between the current Norwegian government and the people of Israel. The people of Israel feel they were betrayed by this decision made at this current time.
Right. Okay, so Yana, you said to Aftenposten on May 24th that Israel has lost its confidence in Norway after Norway recognized Palestine as a state of its own. So what did you mean by that? You also say that Norway will be the losing part. And so I'm wondering, what does Norway have to lose except from our part in the CLA,
HSC.
Ad hoc Liaison Committee, you know, the
Yeah.
International Donor Group for Palestine, which we call Giverlandsgruppen.
I cannot say that. So.
No. So, to sum it up, Israel has lost its confidence in Norway. What does that actually mean? And what does Norway have to lose from that?
So first of all, when I say Israel lost its confidence, so as I said before, the people of Israel feel betrayed by the decision made after October 7 in the midst of the war, when we still have 240,000 people displaced around Israel that have no place to go back to, 8 months of no schools, no real job opportunities, nothing that is normal in any way. We have rockets flying on us from the north, and I don't see a lot of condemnation or anything talked about that, about daily attacks by Hezbollah rockets. And so the people are disappointed, and therefore also it questions what role should Norway have in the day after, as we keep calling it the day after. And for us, this crisis is making us wonder what would be. All options are on the table in terms of the consultations Ambassador Neer is having right now in Jerusalem.
But you know, I think it's a fact that for Norway, it's important to have this brand as a peace-achieving country. It's actually worth money. We put a lot of money on the table in order to be in the rooms where peace are being achieved.
Yeah.
And now we might be kicked out of that room in one of the most important, if not the most important room to create peace. So do you think Israel will refuse Norway to be a part of a peace negotiation process?
I think there's a very important point that you made now, Nina. One point is about the money. As you said, you do put in a lot of money in order to be around the table, the decision-making table. But the question is, and we asked it also a couple of times, not once and not twice, do you make sure the money goes to the right places? Like, you know, it's been 30 years since the Oslo Accords, and the Oslo Accords were supposed to make these foundations for the Palestinians to be able to create. 30 years passed. Do you see the results you would like to see? So that's the first, that's the first question. And in terms of, you said that's the only negotiation table right now in peace. I think that Norway maybe is trying to create also another one. There's also the Saudi peace plan on the table. And the government here also talks about, making sure that the global south is understanding where we come from. So I think, I don't know what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is thinking in terms of different, but they keep saying that there may be a need for a different way of achieving this peace. So,
right. And things are moving fast because now we have the Biden 3-step plan for peace. What is your belief in Biden's plan?
It's an Israeli plan.
What do you mean it's an Israeli
plan? It's an
plan?
Israeli plan. It was an Israeli proposal.
So why do we call it the Biden's plan?
It's a good question. First of all, Biden went out and of course presented it, which is great because he got all the support and got people really pressuring also Hamas, of course, to take this deal and to end this war that they started. So it is an Israeli proposal. That means that we are already on board in some way or other. I don't know exactly what is being talked at the war cabinet right now, but yeah, and it's...
But the way it's written about today in Aftenposten, one of our major newspapers, it comes out as if Israel doesn't know if they want to accept it. So if it is an Israeli plan, why wouldn't they accept it? That's
a point, talking about Norwegian media. So it's a very large point that I'm not sure we can go into right now. But of course we know that the proposal was Israeli. The second thing we know is that yes, inside the war cabinet there are different views. As in a democratic country, we have all kinds of views. But it's not that they refuse the proposal. They're just trying to figure out how to do it in a way that will also, I'm guessing, continue the current government.
There's also these suggestions or, thoughts that Netanyahu doesn't want Hamas to accept the peace suggestion, the peace plan, because of course he's fearing whatever might happen after one of these plans come through.
I think the most important thing on Israel's society, on the people's mind right now, is the hostages. This is our main thing. So when you talk about the government of Netanyahu, but you also need to talk about the people of Israel. So the people of Israel are on the streets, marching walking and talking about the need to release the hostages. And unfortunately, ever since we had to go into Rafah, because we know that there was 4 battalions of Hamas there, and we know that the hostages are there, we already withdrew several bodies of hostages and also got more intelligence of other hostages that were killed. I can't refer to what Netanyahu is thinking in terms of, but I am sure that the people of Israel want to bring our hostages back and to end the war now, even though it will not end in security. Mm-hmm. The main purpose of this was to bring back our security.
You said, that today Israel doesn't really feel the support of Norway. You might then feel the support of Biden, even though it was an Israeli plan. But what about EU? How does Israel, because EU has announced that they support Biden's plan, which according to you is actually Israel's plan. Yeah. So how do you feel about the relation between Israel and the EU, the European Union?
I probably should have maybe prepared more to this question. As long as the countries talk about the need to release the hostages and then for a ceasefire or bringing more humanitarian aid, I think it's valid as long as the plan is not bad. Mm. You can support the plan as long as you put on the pressure on Hamas to bring back the hostages, because that's the reason we went on to this. One of the main reasons we went to this war. Mm. We had to go into this war. So I think they're critical, but in general, I think there's an understanding to the security needs of Israel and the way we are feeling right now, which is less than confident in our place.
Okay, so let's go a little bit back to October 7, the dreadful, terrible, traumatizing day for all of us.
Yeah.
Up to the Hamas terror that happened on October 7, the whole world watched the internal conflict arising in Israel. Months of turmoil over the government's plans to change the way the judicial system works. This sent Israel into a huge crisis. This reform would severely undermine the country's democracy by weakening the judicial system, the opponent says. So Netanyahu's attack on the rule of law, what role do you believe this play in October 7?
First of all, I think the fact that they did it on Simchat Torah, the fact that they did it on one of the most important holidays for the Jewish people, didn't come from nowhere. The fact that they called it the floods of Al-Aqsa, claiming that there is any threat to the Al-Aqsa, it's for a good reason. They claimed there was a reason. They decided to say something that is absolutely false to get people's reactions and rallied also from the West Bank, which I'm happy to say that did not happen. In terms of the turmoil and the demonstrations, I think that was a beautiful demonstration of democracy in Israel. As saying democracy is not only voting for once in 4 years in the polls, but really standing up to make sure that the values of the country are kept. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly how inside it was said, but I think at the end, if there's a wide consensus of making changes, there's a wide consensus of making changes, and that's how democracy is done. But there wasn't a wide consensus. It wasn't a proposal that was put on the table for a wide consensus. And that's what made people say, wait, this is our democracy. Let's see how we can make sure that it kept like this.
At one stage, there was actually also a fear and a debate whether there would be a civil war in Israel. And when you watch now the news, and if you read the Haaretz and other newspapers, you see, the internal conflicts between settlers and very right-wing people who accuse other more left people for not being loyal to the state of Israel. They even attack each other in the street. So is Israel on the verge of falling apart? Is there a danger there could be a civil war?
No.
Was there a danger?
I don't think there was a danger. I think, first of all, Israeli people, as you may know, are very vocal, opinionated, stand their grounds, And sometimes it creates, let's say, heated debates, I would call it.
They all have the chutzpah.
They all have the chutzpah, and they all think that their chutzpah is more important. This is the main thing. But, you know, it's, having said that, we all came together after October 7th.
But did you really? I mean, when you watch the news now, it's brutal.
It is. Everything is. First of all, I really think that news exaggerate a lot because they need to. They need to make headlines. They don't talk about all the nice stories, all the resilience, all the gathering, all the working together in Rahat, the Bedouins and the Jews and the Arabs working together to make how do you call it, food packages, for example. Nobody's talking about the beautiful things that has been done and being done for the last almost 8 months. It's not on the agenda because it's not interesting enough. It's not clickable enough, unfortunately. And I think one of the things is also most important is they always talk about a violence, for example, but they never talk about the fact that as a country, a democratic country with a rule of law, there's always consequences for that. So that's also very important to remember. It doesn't happen in a void. It doesn't being forgotten or and social media also has a lot to contribute, unfortunately, because when you are on social media, for example, and you are making some kind of a bubble then you only see the people who agree with you. It creates, you know, there's many research now about this, about the algorithms and them feeding you specific things that just make you feel like you're right in your way and you just should continue that.
Right.
And that creates more division between people because people do not have this one-on-one talks anymore, unfortunately. But there's so many beautiful initiatives inside the society to make sure that we go back to basis.
And I think, I think you're very right about that. And also because all the stories I've heard from friends in Israel and friends visiting Israel is, you know, how the civil society, how people in the street, how the neighbors, how the relatives take care of each other.
Yeah.
But then again, there is a criticism in that because they do it because they want to, of course, but also because the state is not able to. So there is still, though, very much a feeling that the government today is not able to do what the government should have done, both before October 7, which probably, maybe, could have been a part of 7 October actually finding place, and then after October 7, in healing, in helping, in being there. You know, I think it's quite interesting. There is this... there is a professor of history named Dekel Chen, the father of a dual citizen. His son is in Gaza as a hostage. He says that he has heard nothing from the Israeli government, but lots from the US Biden administration. So he's very, very upset that the Israeli government hasn't picked up the phone to call him to say a word, while the Americans actually have. So, I mean, where is the Israeli government in all of this?
I think this is a question that will have to be answered by the investigation committee that they are talking about having, that they'll have to have, especially after October 7th. And it should also cover everything that happened ever since in terms of the war itself, but also in terms of the reaction of the government or the ability to really rally around this major event in the society. But you can hear that in the Knesset. You can hear a lot of people talking about it. That's again part of the democracy. They say it. There's all kinds of opinions being taken into consideration. But at the end, I believe that we'll be able to. It's hard. It's hard. The divisions are hard when you're not talking to each other. But once we go back and sit and talk, because at the end, as you said, you know a lot of people that were there, for example. The best and worst thing, Nina, right now of coming to Israel as an Israeli, of being abroad and coming to Israel, is the feel that every person you see on the street is feeling the same way. He's going through the same turmoil you're going. It doesn't matter what's his political view or if he's criticizing, if he's supporting. They're all going through the same trauma, uncertainty, being afraid of these horrible 2 words of hutar lepilsum, which means allowed to publish every time that there's another soldier that is killed. So everybody are in the same boat at the end as humans. So I think that would bring us together also afterwards.
And you know, when I watch you now, Yana, talking, I could actually feel the pain.
Yeah.
In your voice. So you know, I'm so sorry for all of us, really. Okay, but I'll continue with
of course,
with my conversation.
Yeah.
And of course, also there is this truth to, you know, the saying that there is no thing that unifies you more than having a common enemy.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
So there is also this fear in Israel that October 7 can happen again. You know, that like in the old Eastern European times, it's just the first pogrom of several pogroms coming. And it's not anymore a question of if, but when. What are your thoughts about that? How can the Israeli government prevent that from happening? I mean, is bombing Gaza the way Israel is doing now the answer to that fear? Or is that, can you justify that?
I think, I'm not going to justify bombing Gaza because it's not bombing Gaza. It's literally putting all soldiers to risk, trying to minimize the casualty as much as possible, because the footage from Gaza are horrible. Every person with a heart will tell you that. Every person in Israel will tell you that. If you want to listen to the extreme, you can listen to the extreme on both sides, like you can do it here in Norway. But at the end, it's interesting that you said that people fear that it's going to happen, because Hamas leaders are saying that over and over again. And that is not getting enough news at all.
No.
So I would ask, and that's a very important question to everybody, if you have a better way to make us feel secure again in our little home, in our little land, please let me know, other than to try to eradicate Hamas capability, military's capability, and governmental capabilities in Gaza. I would really like to know, I really would. And it's not only Hamas. We have the Houthis practicing day and sending out these videos, how they're practicing on doing the same thing that's been done on October 7th, just like in the southern part of Israel. We have, again, all the time rockets from Hezbollah. And Iran is orchestrating all of it and enjoying the fruits of it. So going into Gaza to try to bring our hostages back, again, we need to remember also that we already had a deal. They were supposed to give us back all the women, all the children, all the sick. It was part of the deal. Why do we still have women and children there? Why do we still have an elderly in hostage? So even now we're talking about the ceasefire, that's the three-stage plan. Now we need to make sure that Hamas will follow this plan, because they literally did not do it the first time. And people tend to forget that. This could have been over.
So what do you say about the accusations that Netanyahu doesn't actually want Hamas to want the peace?
I think it's a way to maybe explain yourselves, maybe something that you want to do, like explaining yourselves why Norway decided to recognize a state with no borders and with no government, knowing very well that if today there's going to be elections in the PA, who is going to win that elections? It's not going to be Fatah. So when you recognize the country with no borders, that doesn't exist, knowing that there's a very good possibility that the government of this country will be a terror organization that the EU recognizes but you don't here in Norway, then it's a way to tell yourself that you did a good thing, but it's other people's fault.
What I hear from the Norwegian population that are, you know, active in the debate around this conflict, this war, is that both Israel and the Palestinians need to get a new political leadership. One name that has actually been mentioned from the Palestinian side is Marwan Barghouti.
Yes, I read the piece in VG also.
Yeah, and that he could be kind of a new Nelson Mandela character, not because he's a peaceful person, because he's actually been in prison for 20 years or more, though claiming himself he was not guilty of what he's been accused of, which is killing and planning terror. But he's been in prison for such a long time that he hasn't been a part of whatever has happened during the last 20 years. and he might have the position amongst the Palestinians which is strong enough in order to represent them, and that he then, if he is truly wanting to achieve peace, could be that character. What is your thoughts about that?
I think in order for us right now, I don't see how we can go back to live in security. That's the main goal, right? Side by side in security. So I don't even see how it's happening right now. But in terms of the Palestinian side of government, I think that given the fact that it's been 30 years ever since the Oslo Accord, a lot of money from all around the world has been invested in them to be able to build themselves the good infrastructure, the health infrastructure, the academia, everything to flourish as a country. I think the best thing for them is actually to root out any ideologies that might end up being from the river to the sea, because we hear more and more of that, and continue with this technocrat government that will really make sure in a professional manner that everything is being taken care of in terms of the infrastructure for a flourishing country.
Rather than making tunnels.
Rather than making tunnels, for example, or rather than teaching that you should kill the Jews, or rather than chanting from the river to the sea, meaning there's no place for this other state called Israel next to us, rather than paying the families of terrorists, because if you sit in prison, you get paid for the amount of Jews you killed. And this is what needs to be done. I think also for the sake of the Palestinians, because these ideologies will not get us anywhere. If you have, in March, there was a survey in the Palestinian Authority, 71% of the Palestinians agreed with what Hamas did on October 7th.
And also Hamas actually won the election in 2006, both in Gaza and the West Bank. Okay, so what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that we shouldn't actually look for the new Palestinian leader. We should rather try to define an ideology, a set of values and visions that the Palestinian could base their life on.
I don't think that anybody from the outside can tell the Palestinians what values it should have, but I think that the most important part is the professional part, is to make sure that their leaders really take care of them. Take care of them by creating the right positions, by creating the right infrastructure, by making sure that the right people, not people who are the politicians or the ideologists are in power, but the ones that really care and know how to make the good decisions for the people, know how to, for example, run health systems, know how to run the academia, know how to do. I think this is what they need, because it's been so long that they tried to do it.
But you think Marwan Barghouti could do that? He's been in Israel for a long time. Has he
learned anything? He learned a lot, yeah. You also know, unfortunately, that Hania learned so much being in Israel. I don't know. I don't know if
and
it will
what
be
about
interesting.
Israel? Doesn't Israel have to change political leadership?
Need I remind you that we had 5 elections? It's forgotten, but I always remember that because it was just so not long ago, just before October 7th. It was the 5th election that we had. So I think there's a real interest on trying to figure out where we're headed in terms of the future politicians. But let's see what happens now also.
A big part of Israel's today population does actually live on the West Bank. Settlers. I think there are about 700,000 settlers. It's hard to understand through Norwegian media how many of them are actually, kind of militant and breaking the law when they attack other people. I mean, they literally try to kill people every now and then. And as far as I know, there's about 10,000 of them being that kind of violent, having this military behavior. And they support Netanyahu. So tell us, I would actually like to know a little bit more about the diversity amongst the settlers. Who are the settlers? And what is the future for the settlers?
So the name settlers is very broad name. First of all, as I said before, every time that somebody breaks the law in Israel, he is being charged.
Is he?
He is, but you'll never read about it in the media.
Okay.
You'll only see what happened. You don't see the consequences.
But we even read about the police protecting them while they are doing violence.
We see sometimes footage of it, but then the police also is being prosecuted. It's not a no man's land there.
So what you're saying then is that we can't even trust the Israeli police then?
It's not, no, I didn't say that we're not try. I say that we need to make sure that people understand that at the end, there's always a judicial system that will charge the people who are breaking the law.
But is it really? I mean...
Yes, I believe in our system.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe in our system, and we know sometimes that the wheels of justice are slow, but I believe in our system. That's a very important part of Israel.
Okay.
I do believe in it.
Because, there are these accusations that through 20 years with Netanyahu, the system has been filled up with people who rather work for their bosses than taking responsibility for the population. Like in a political society where you build down the infrastructure rather than strengthening it with the expertise, which happens, in right-wing totalitarian societies. So if that is true, then that would explain why we get the feeling that police doesn't actually do what they're supposed to do, making sure violence doesn't happen, and then rather protecting the people doing the violence.
Ask every Israeli in Israel about the police. Everybody has a different view. Some say that they're too hard on the lefts, and the others say that they're too hard on the right, and the others say that they're too hard on the Haredim. And it's a perspective. It's a thing of perspective, and yes, sometimes you get lost in it. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, for somebody as my family is there, my friends are there, I read the news, I read all kinds of outlets, which is very important also to understand the bigger prospect, like the bigger picture of Israel in general, and you can make a decision even.
It is a hard society. I made an episode with a friend of mine who moved to Israel.
No.
She's a Norwegian Jewish woman. She married an Israeli. They lived here for many, many years. They wanted to go to Israel. This is maybe like 6-7 years ago or something.
Okay.
And they decided we'll have to go back to Norway. It was too hard. It was just too hard. They didn't feel the society worked. So, but of course,
very different than Norway.
It's different, and of course, I'm not going to brag about Norway, but it does work pretty well, and we are pretty safe, and which also makes us pretty arrogant.
That I agree with, Nina. I do absolutely agree with the fact. No, and not about the arrogance, but the fact that you are safe, and I'm happy that you are safe, and therefore, I think, and it was said before, and it was said even more after October 7th, you will never understand what it is to be in this existential threat from all sides.
And I hope you will.
And I hope you will never know it. Yes, but
that's true. And I hope you will eventually achieve the same safety. So let's go back to the settlers or the people living on the West Bank, which many people in Norway will say is living on occupied land, and they have to withdraw. So what is the diversity? Who are these people?
I have to tell you that I don't go into who are these people in general. I myself, for example, came from a moshav, which is like a kibbutz of people, religious people, that withdrew in 2006 from the Gaza Strip, when Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip and they all had to leave and to go somewhere else, and they did that. The hitnatkut, it was one of the hardest parts of the Israeli history, because this was the first time you had our own soldiers tearing our own people from their homes in order to try and think about the next step.
Achieving peace.
Achieving peace. And we did it to ourselves. And I remember my brother was then back then in the army, and it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because we left everything there in Gush Katif. We left everything there. Success, agriculture and everything. And the Hamas just burned it down instead of utilizing it to help the Gazan people. And before that, people need to be reminded that Israelis in Gush Katif also and the Gazas, they live together. Like, not my days, but my older friends, for example, they used to go to Gaza to the market. It happened. It's not far-fetched. If you root out the ideology that says that Israel has no place to exist, then you root out the need for a resistance from the other side. This is what will happen. You need to make sure that to see that we already made sacrifices, and Israel always tried to make the peace and offered not once, not twice, 3 times and she was always declined.
But those were only like less than 10,000 people. Now there's 700,000 on the West Bank. So how do we...
I will go back to Herzl. If you'll dream it.
Theodor Herzl.
Yeah.
The founder of the Zionism as an ideology.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't. What do you mean? You will go back to him?
I say that if you wish it, we will make it happen. If we will have an opportunity for a sustainable peace and security, main word, Israel will do whatever it can in order to make it happen.
Okay.
We showed that we did it already.
Okay.
We showed it when we also offered parts of Jerusalem in the previous times that there were a peace plan on the table. We offered half of Jerusalem. We can't forget the fact that in the last years, the entire world has become more polarized. Everything become more sensational, everything become more emotional. It's either us or them. It's everywhere.
The world has become more dangerous in a way.
Exactly. So unfortunately, this hasn't passed on Israel, the fact that this polarization is there. But I believe in our true will to live as our own Jewish majority in our whole piece of land, and that we will do whatever we can do to make it happen in security.
We all want safety and security. So, we say here that whenever there's a conflict in the Middle East concerning Israel, anti-Semitism will grow in the rest of the world, and we will feel it here, which to a certain extent is true. How does it affect the Jewish population in Israel? What are the thoughts amongst Israelis, the Jewish population in Israel, about Jews outside Israel? What do you expect from us, and how do you feel about us?
First of all, we love the Jewish people around the world. That's important to understand, first of all. But I have to disagree. I don't think there's not a correlation between a war in the Middle East or a conflict in the Middle East to any sort of racism or anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is the problem of the society itself. It's rooted in the society. To connect the two is not the right thing. Unfortunately, we see that this conflict specifically, because of the calls, for example, from the river to the sea, meaning the Jewish people do not have any place in all of this land, then it becomes anti-Semitic. And then you have all these, you see the campuses in the US, you see these calls, you see this lack of tolerance to the Jewish people. And I have to say that it's appalling. It's appalling. It's a problem of every society to make sure that their minorities is being treated equally and protected. Also here in Norway, especially here in Norway, because you're such a small minority. And the fact that you unfortunately know of a lot of people here, I know a lot of Jews here that have thoughts of leaving Norway, has nothing to do with Israel. It has a lot to do with the fact that they feel unsafe in their own society. So I would ask this question, the people taking care of their own, like the government taking care of the people of Norway. Why is anti-Semitism on the rise, and why, or are you doing enough to make sure that it stops, to make sure that your people feel safe?
It says a lot about what it's like being Jewish today in the world, when Jews in Israel, some of them choose to go back to Europe, only to find that schools and kindergartens are being guarded by police with weapons. So then actually the Israeli authorities, they are right when they say don't leave Israel because you're no more safe in other places. And then Norwegian or European or Jews around the world wanting to leave, go to Israel to feel safe. But of course, Israel isn't very safe.
It's not safe right now. Yeah.
But
I think, especially in Norway, my eldest was actually in the Barnehage.
The Jewish Barnehage?
She was there.
Yeah.
Yes, and I remember walking her to the Barnehage and seeing all this. It was difficult. It was difficult to understand how come in such a liberal, safe country as Norway, there's still barricades and police guarding the small Jewish Barnhage in the city.
And it even looks like a war zone.
It does.
It could look better. I mean, they could use flowers like they do on Karl Johan.
Absolutely. I heard that there was some kind of a proposal of making the security better, but also like nicer to make it look more appealing. Because yes, right now you feel like you're going to like.
So what was it like leaving your little daughter there?
You know, it was good to have some people who share the same values and share the same holidays and stuff like that. But it wasn't easy to know that she is, first of all, going through these 2 doors that have to be, very much guarded, and also she can't really go and play outside. Like their outside is also very small and
backyard
and closed.
Yeah.
And in my head, it was like, no, it shouldn't be like this in no way.
So she's not there anymore?
She's not there anymore.
You chose another kindergarten?
I chose another kindergarten. No, they were very nice. They were amazing. It was just a bit far for us. So it was more of a convenience,
right.
In terms of bringing her closer. But, and yeah, also, this experience, as we served in Moscow, as we're serving here, hopefully we'll serve somewhere else. We want to make sure that she'll have the experience of the Norwegian society as a whole. And I wanted to see her, flourishing.
So did you put her in a skogsbarnehage, which is very Norwegian?
What's a skogsbarnehage?
It's a barnehage in the forest. It's, up in the nature.
No, because that's far. I need her close. But it is a very nice barnehage. I think that the most important thing was also the fact that she'll be having a hot meal. Yeah. And not just like bread with.
That's a very Norwegian thing.
I know. But
brødskive.
But I like hot meals. I'm a former from the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So my even to this day, my aunt will tell me, "Did you have something hot to eat?" And it's like, yes, I did. So it's rooted in my head to make sure that she eats a warm meal.
One more kind of political question before I want to round it up.
Yeah.
Not so long ago, UN said that the United Nations, they said that there were only 15,000 dead in Gaza. And we've been talking about, the media and how the algorithms are feeding whatever we are looking for. We just also heard that the Israelis said that they are not sure that they are responsible for the tents that burnt down. Mm-hmm. So what is true? What is not true? How many people were killed? Who set fire to the tents? What do you know?
What do you know? That's a very good question. I know as much as the IDF knows right now as they're investigating everything, but they do know that again, we're talking about facts, and this is the most important thing when you talk about the media. We need to go back to facts, to root out the emotions, and first of all talk about facts to make sure that we're on the same page. We can have the feelings, but we cannot let them cloud the importance of having the facts. So the fact is that yes, they targeted the 2 terrorists, very high up terrorists, and there's right now 2 explanations from what I understand. We know that they had a storage room like of rockets there somewhere next to it, so maybe that's what caused the fire, but we know that it wasn't absolutely a targeted fire towards the refugee
Netanyahu
camp.
also apologized the thing.
It was tragic. It is a tragic. It was a tragic accident, but it wasn't intentional. It was going back to investigating ourselves, and in terms of the UN numbers, we said from day one that the fact that everybody are just accepting Hamas word, the Ministry of Health, I'm saying it in quotes, of Gaza, that's a Hamas-run ministry. They're saying numbers, and everybody takes these numbers as they're the truth. There are a lot of casualties in Gaza. Unfortunate. Every death, every person that is dead, every mom, every child, it's a whole world. But the fact that they're taking the numbers automatically from the Hamas-run government ministry, there's a problem there.
Do you think we eventually will get the accurate numbers of the casualties?
I think it may take a while. I hope so, because we had the same thing. It was in November, if I remember correctly. It's been a while, unfortunately, since the bombing, the so-called bombing of the hospital that they claimed that Israel did. And it took very little time to understand that it was not Israel. We weren't there. It was literally a misfired rocket that they themselves tried to send to Israel.
Right.
And the fact that they were so quick to say in the first 5 minutes, they already knew how many deaths there were and how many children and women were. 500 deaths, half of them are children and women. And everybody took that as the whole truth and never questioned it. That was the time when you saw a real rise of demonstrations around the world. That was the peak, the beginning of all what we see right now. And it turned out it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. But how come nobody questioned how they knew the exact number and the exact number of children and women in the first 5 minutes?
Yeah, and the big problem is that the turmoil that this creates among the feelings in our population here, it's like you open the bottle and you let it out and you can't get it in again.
Absolutely.
That's it's a very depressing feeling, I must say. So, Yana, what is your message to the Jews in Norway, to us having a Jewish identity? What shall we do? What shall we feel? What shall we say?
First of all, our door is always open for the Jewish community.
To the embassy?
To the embassy, to...
It's hard to get in here, though. You have to show your ID
That's
and leave
true.
your phone outside.
That's true. You have to do that at any embassy. But my door, and we are reachable, and we are here for you. We are always here for you. And I hope most of the Jewish population in Norway knows that. And I know that because I meet with a lot of them one by one, and they're telling their stories of how they're feeling right now. And I try to encourage them and to just tell them that stay strong, we are with you, and we appreciate everything that you can do for us, or that you can do to, if you can raise your voice, that's good. If you don't feel comfortable, that's okay, because it's not about the Jews. This is about Israel. We want to make the differentiation, because when you criticize Israel, good, no problem. When you demonize us, not good, but still, we can handle it. But it should never come on the expense of the Jews in Norway.
But it does.
Norwegian problem.
It's a problem of the world.
It is.
Isn't it?
It is.
And your last name is Gal. So the very last question, are you crazy? Coming here?
I need to, that's a question to my husband, because that's his name. After we got married, I told him that if he'll behave the first 2 years, I'll add his name, because at the beginning it was just my last name, Kotlyar, which is a boilermaker in Yiddish. It goes back to... So he behaved nice.
Cutler, it's cooking.
Yeah, it's like so it was
a boiler.
Yeah, and he behaved the first 2 years. So I added his name, and
it's not a very feministic thing to do, though.
Feminism comes in all shapes and forms. I had to make him work for it. 2 years of good behavior in a marriage. That's a good. I think that's a start. That's a good start.
Okay, so at least. Being a crazy boiler, I'm very thankful for having this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Nina, for being here and for having this conversation, because it is very important to get the message out to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Takk for at du lytter til Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden. Om du liker denne podcasten, kan du trykke abonner i din foretrukne spiller. Da vil du motta beskjed om når neste episode blir publisert. Dersom du har spørsmål til Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden, eller vil bidra med innspill og ideer, send gjerne en mail til post@jødepodden.no. Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden støttet av Stiftelsen Fritt Ord. Musikken du hører komponert og arrangert av Jens Wendelboe.